Welcome to 15 And, where we grow through the transformative stories and principles from the Bible. I hope you enjoy this teaching. I hope you share it with others. And I hope you go to 15and.org, click the Donate Now button, and support this mission.
I remember being in the 9th grade, and the cool thing to do with your jeans back then was to take your jeans and tight roll them. You would fold them over your ankle and you would roll them up. And that was the cool way to wear your jeans. I can only imagine how funny that would look now if I were to see that, because back then jeans were baggier. They didn't have slim fit pants and these balloon legs. Why did I want to do that? I wanted to wear my jeans the cool way. And it's not about like a weakness or a strength of mind. All of us have different ways that we value certain things because of brands that we admire or purchases that we make, and the ways that we look to show up in the world and to show ourselves as a part of what's happening, being in the know. And what I don't think we think enough about is the invisible reality that's influencing and shaping so much of our thinking. I mean, we use this term now in terms of social media. We call it the algorithm. But the algorithm's really always been there. It's in the air. It's the narratives that are swirling, that are shaping us, that are influencing us to tight roll our jeans or much worse behaviors. And so much of the narrative and the swirl around us that is so invisible yet so pervasive is continually hidden away. And so what we're doing in this series is we're looking at the book of Revelation. Now, it's not Revelations, it's revelation. And we think of this term apocalyptic as negative, but really a revelation is the apocalypse. It's the unveiling. It's taking out what's hidden and bringing it into the light. It's a laser beam on all the dark things that people want to keep hidden away. If I gave you the full stop truth reality of what I want you to grasp today, it's just this. You are being shaped by an empire you can't see. And if you don't resist it, you'll reproduce it. I mean, the whole spirit of what we're looking at in this book of Revelation, and especially today, it's like it's this coded language from the frontier, as there's a group of people who are not living according to this invisible, hidden, all-pervasive, influential narrative. And good grief, if there's ever a time in the world today that I'm like, how much can human influence ruin what it means to be a part of a healthy society and actually cause the most evil and corrupt behavior? I mean, all the stuff that's coming out with Epstein, and that doesn't happen. You know, you don't have scientists begging for money and rich people needing to feel self-important without some kind of brokenness in us that is being grabbed a hold of or taken advantage of by this all-pervasive hidden influence. And so what we're going to see today is a big word, and it's a word that's used in lots of ways of thinking through the pervasive hidden influence. Last time we looked at this word throne, and we started to understand that there is a center to reality. There is an entity, a being on the throne, and who is worthy? The slain and standing Lamb. Today, as we go deeper in this series and really start to understand what we're looking at in Revelations, I want to go right to 17 now and start to unpack this. This chapter is wild. Revelation 17, verse 1. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters." Now, I want to pause just real quick. I want you to think about Revelation as something that is cyclical more than it's linear. So what a lot of people do when they're looking at Revelation that are more in the fantastical way of reading it, it's like, oh, it's this predictive timeline of the future. And so the energy of the story begins to be about how do we figure out what's happening next? Well, the problem with this viewpoint, it's really corrupted by an idea that came about 150, 170 years ago. It's a new idea that what's called the rapture, people are going to just be taken away. You can go do some research on this. I'm not for sure where it came from, but when Jesus says one will be standing in the field, one will be taken away, as it will be as it was in the days of Noah. Think about this. And the idea of the story of Noah, it was the unrighteous that were taken away and the righteous stayed. So the whole idea is very flawed. And what it does is it shapes this reading that is very fear-based. You're very worried about like what's playing out. How's it going to go? What's the timeline here? And for me, this was very influential growing up, so much so that I just didn't even want to touch the book of Revelation for years, because I came home one day and the door to our house had been was open and stuff was strewn everywhere. I just got home from school and I started looking around, and the thought in my mind should have been a very clear, logical reason for what was going on. But I started to look around and stuff is strewn everywhere. I walk back to my parents' bedroom and stuff is strewn everywhere. I'm looking around and my first thought was, oh no, I missed the rapture. Because this had just been drilled into my brain over and over and over. Like, if you're doing bad stuff with your girlfriend, you're going to miss the rapture. Whatever's the thing that was happening. And I look around and I'm like, apparently heaven needs VCRs and those Sony phones that had the thick antenna. At some point, it hit me. Oh, no, I didn't miss the rapture. We were robbed. We were robbed. And literally, we were robbed. Somebody had kicked the front door in and woke up the next day to try to put pants on to go to school in the winter, and I only had shorts. Somebody stole my jeans. They stole everything. It was crazy. Here's the idea. We think about Revelation as this book that predicts the future, and we read it according to a timeline, which is so insane. So Revelation was only written for 1988 or 2002 or 2025 or 26 whenever people were reading it. No. It was truth for them and truth for us. And the way that's super helpful for me to understand it is, it's a story that's continually playing out. It's a movie that's continually playing out, and I can find myself in the story. And there is a time when this cycle will end. There are some people that are like, we just keep bringing heaven now. The cycle never ends. And there's some people that think about it in terms of, who cares? We just got to last out this terrible place, and one day we're going to go to heaven. When the reality of the truth is, new heaven comes to new earth. It's all going to be remade. The law of entropy is going to end. And we're given instructions for this cycle that's playing out that shapes how we live. And so one of the interpretive keys that you can use to understand Revelation is, it's like these 7 seals and the 7 trumpets and the 7 bowls. You hear this pattern repeating from Revelation 6 to like 16. And it's this cycle of, we're learning what history feels like on earth in these seals. And these trumpets are where God is warning and exposing. It's the unveiling. And then these bowls are what happens when evil ripens, when humans destroy themselves. So this is what's powerful about understanding Revelation. We looked last time at the slain lamb who is sitting on the throne. Now we're seeing what is being lived out that upends. It can't dethrone that power, but it lives against that power. And we could think about it in terms of empire. So go back to Revelation 17 with me. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me. So this is what happens when evil ripens. That's the pouring out of these bowls. Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. Now, this passage, this chapter is really intense. I'm going to let it bring the weight of truth that it brings through its graphic representation. With her, the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. So the punishment of the great prostitute, what is this prostitute? We're going to keep reading. We're going to see. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. Woo. Look, I don't know how your worldview works, but if your worldview is one of these that just says all that exists in reality is what we can see with our eyes, there's too many stories throughout human history of people who have experienced an unseen spiritual reality. And this is what John's having happen. He's having a vision. He's carried away in the Spirit. For him, is his experience a literal carrying away? Is it a trance-like state? I don't really care. I know it's by the Spirit and it's into a wilderness. The significance of the wilderness is this is the place where the transformation occurs. This is the place you get the vision. This is the in-between. This is the limbo moment. It's the haunt of the demons, and it's where you face your greatest fears and become something you never thought you could be in a positive direction of transformation. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names. So you don't have the term Antichrist in Revelation, but you do have the beast, and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery. So John's seeing all this, right? Babylon, the great mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns." Well, yeah, I'd be astonished. I'd be like, what is this? My friends will never believe me. Verse 8. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. Now, right here, you've got these people that read Revelation and they're like, oh, who's the beast? Who's the beast? Who's the beast? Look, there is a cycle to this. And I've said this and I want you to hear it because it's so powerful and it's so beautiful. If you read Revelation in a linear way, I've been told that you really would have to the earth would end like 3 times. So there's a cycle here. There's a repetition. And what is it? Well, the empire repeats. Empires rise and fall. In those empires rising and fall, there are leaders in those empires. It's the beasts. It's the mutations. They're not leading to our greater humanity, rehumanizing. They're dehumanizing. And in that, Babylon continues to rebrand. Babylon is the spirit of the age. It's the zeitgeist of the times. It's the hidden part that's the narrative that's swirling, that's influencing our thinking. And then the dragon never changes tactics. The dragon's going to accuse. We looked at that last time. The dragon has been defanged. I saw Satan fall like lightning. There was a period of time where the devil had power in a way that the devil doesn't now. We are the overcomers. There is still real power there, but there is a greater power. But the dragon's still going to use those same tactics. It's going to accuse. And empires are going to rise and fall. And Babylon's going to continue to rebrand to try to draw people in and influence. And the beast, the leaders, are going to mutate. This idea of the beast coming up out of the abyss, I mean, it's so powerful when you read this phrase, the beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up. There's a cyclical pattern here. There are beasts always emerging. And we're going to look at this when we get into some of the background here, because I want you to understand that they were reading it for them and we can read it for us. These early Christians, they had a story. This poetic, visionary image was capturing them to capture their imagination. And it can capture our imagination now. If this story wasn't capturing their imagination, they could not really fully grasp what had happened in the cross and the resurrection that would fully inoculate them against the power of Babylon, against the empires that rise and fall, against the beasts. And likewise for us, if we're not poetically captured in an imaginative way by how powerful the story is, we get swept away, we get deceived. We live in the spirit of the times without a sharpness of discernment and awareness. The inhabitants of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come. It's happened, it's happening, it's going to happen again. You have to imagine kind of like the spirit of this vision that John is giving the early church, inspired by the Holy Spirit, in this way of like getting a coded message across. It's like John's out in the wilderness sending back the message in Morse code, so the enemy can't really decipher it. Keep tracking, because I'm going to show you this very explicitly. Verse 9, this calls for a mind with wisdom. So look at this. This calls for a mind and wisdom. This isn't a black and white reading that we look at and we go, ooh, get out your charts, people. Let's predict what's happening. No, the 7 heads are the 7 hills on which the woman sits. There's a decoding that's happening here. So John sees this vision. What was the reigning empire at this time? Rome. What's the legend of how Rome is founded? The 7 hills. Of course, it's obvious when you see this. And even the text itself is, by the Holy Spirit's inspiration, showing us how to read this. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is. The other is not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. I mean, so what's playing out in these what's playing out in this vision, this decoding that's happening, it's like, hey, look, this is about what's happening in Rome. And leaders were rising and falling. So did it refer to a specific leader here? Possibly. And there's a lot of different theories on who it's talking about. Is it talking about a certain emperor at that time when John would have received this vision? Very possibly, but I want you to see this like coded language here, because it's this unveiling. It's an apocalyptic critique, and it's a deconstruction to help everyone understand this is what's really going on right now. The prostitute is this timeless Babylon spirit that represents the narrative that's hidden. In a lot of ways, it's the economic religious seduction that powers the empire. It's all about peace. It's all about Pax Romana. It's all about the money, and it's all about driving this empire forward and using religion to keep the narrative alive. So empire feeds on itself. It's got to get all this money. How does it get all this money? They grow the empire. They send the army out, and the army takes new lands. And the army, as they take new lands, they get a new tax base. As they get a new tax base, Rome gets to keep growing. Well, we've got to get people bought into what they're a part of. So we're going to build a religious system that reinforces Caesar is Lord. Whoever the Caesar is, it's the beasts that rise and fall. And we've got to keep them believing this. And so we're going to surround them with messaging, with propaganda to keep them believing that this is the way they should live. So the religious and the business are going to be completely intertwined. So they're going to be a part of guilds where they have to pour out drink offerings to the Caesar. And they're going to be a part of these guilds, and they have to basically take a mark that they would be participating in this guild, that they would be religiously faithful to the empire. And in being religiously faithful to the empire, they could do business. And by being able to do business, they could participate in the economy. And by being able to participate in the economy, they could survive. This is a game of survival. Some think at this time about 92% of the population was like a serf or a peasant. There's very few rich and elite people. And of course, when they do the archaeological digs, they're always finding these incredibly ornate places and palaces and all these features that were just so amazing that Rome accomplished. But this was the elite. Most people didn't have access to that. And so we're trying to keep this empire growing and propped up. And so they take new lands, get new taxes, and the beast has to rise and fall. And it just keeps on going. Now, here's the thing. What does the empire like? You have generals on the front end who are taking new territories. They don't mind protest. They don't mind you coming against them because they got a bloodlust. And so you have stories of some of these generals crucifying tons of people. When you're coming into the village, we're here to take over. You're going to submit to Rome now. You're going to have a new religion because we got to use the religion to keep you propped up and believing the narrative. And in you buying into this new religion, this economic religious connection, we could call it Babylon, this empire is being empowered. And a general with a bloodlust is like, yeah, so you don't want us to come in? Then we'll just crucify a ton of people, using fear and power and oppression. Over and over and over again. And so what's interesting is about this vision, it's being used through this metaphor of a prostitute. Why? Because the prostitute is a picture of desperation, selling yourself because you're in a place of financial oppression. That's why prostitution exists. And on the male side of that, because there's no misogyny here, it's just understanding an ancient way of thinking. On the male side of that, it's finding a quick shortcut to feeling power. So you have someone in economic oppression, and then you have someone who's taking a quick path to power. So let's go back to Revelation 17, because this keeps on blowing my mind. The 10 horns you saw, so this is after it's been breaking down. You need to read this with wisdom, this beast that rise and fall. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. Now, this is where people get really fanciful with their readings and like, ooh, what is this? This 10, it's this countries. The European Union came together and people lost their minds. And again, what we're reading is a context that happened then. It's a context that happened in their time. It's coded language, but the principles are still true. And we don't even really know exactly what all of this would have meant in great detail to their time, but we get the big idea that's true for all of us now. Empires rise and fall, beasts mutate, Babylon rebrands. But the Lamb's still on the throne. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And with them will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. So there's two groups of people here. Those that participate in Babylon and the machinations of power and economic oppression, and there's those who resist it. And you saw earlier in the chapter about this blood that was spilled, this blood of the martyrs. And the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. See, again, the timelessness of this. The waters you saw, it's all the people. You know, some of you know this, that I'm here to help you follow Jesus and be the best leader you can be. That's my obsession with 15 and to build a healthy culture. And there are times that things can bleed into my life and things that are affecting me. And I try to always walk a road that lives in the dynamic tension of two realities. I've stated something to you before, and I believe it's worth stating again. I believe that Trump's morality ends us as an influential nation, as an empire. We are, in many ways, the empire of the age. And I don't know how God works through all that, but I can't get behind immorality. I also believe the ideas of the left, the extreme left, rot any society, anytime. My daughter, you know, it's crazy to sacrifice and put your kids through college and to have them have the most insane experiences. And I could speak to some of the positive experiences. And I knew what we were doing when we signed up for this. It's a narrative in the air that is being unveiled, and maybe it isn't for everybody. The times are a-changing. But she has an assignment that she has to do. And this is one of the crazier classes, and these crazy classes exist. And this was the question. When did you first become aware that you're white? Like, that's the paper she has to do. Now, I am telling you within myself, I have to be aware that I could get like radicalized and so infuriated by this because I recognize the stupidity and the intellectual rot of the idea. And this is definitely, I mean, I had to buy the textbooks for the class. I've looked at the textbook and the insanity of it. Here's the idea. To put one race up, we have to push one race down. That's not biblical whole truth. If you love Jesus, if you follow Jesus, if you worship the slain lamb, you will not be racist. Racism gets rooted out of you because you know it's all the multitudes, all the nations, all the languages, and there's a we there. And if you love Jesus, you can also understand there's a individual, there's a me. That my identity in Christ is bigger than my race, my gender, sexuality, any of that. And as I follow Jesus and I'm made more whole, I see who I am and I see the whole, and it's a both hand. And if we don't grasp that, here's what's going to be rotten in our thinking. The Babylon of the age is we're going to fall into the false narratives that tell us We have to collectively prop up a race or take down another race. And it gets us into a victim mindset on both political extremes. The beast in the 10 horns, verse 16, you saw, will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. So again, the beasts mutate. God, in the wisdom of God, allows a protection to be removed so these beasts lead into a self-destruction. I mean, if that's not a political critique of empires, I don't know how to better say this to you. This was what happened to Rome, right? The leaders at the top, absolute power corrupts absolutely. They rot from the inside, and this big empire they're a part of, as they mutate, they rot the empire from within. And the spirit of what's happening in the times is the Babylon. It's this prostitute. I want to go to chapter 18 real quick. After this, I saw another angel, verse 1, coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. With a mighty voice, he shouted, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons and a haunt for every impure spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable animal." So the idea is as filthy as you can imagine. For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. But isn't it crazy, all the people that were like being exposed in the Epstein files? What a nasty wickedness. And we're seeing this unveiling occur. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries. Verse 4, then I heard another voice from heaven say, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes." So here's the idea. You exist in a time. You are surrounded by a narrative. You are surrounded by Babylon. Empires rise and fall. Beasts mutate, rot empires from within, and Babylons keep rebranding. There's always a spirit of the age that shows up that rots you from the inside, that ruins your thinking. If you completely buy into the zeitgeist of the times on extreme left or extreme right, you will not have the mind of Christ. You will be very broken in your mindset. And so the voice from heaven here, and this is what John is seeing play out, says, "Come out of the prostitute." This is graphic sexual language. In fact, it says, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. Like, I am trying to be clear to you how evocative this image is, because it was capturing their imagination. It was a pervasive story to keep playing out in their head. Come out of the prostitute so you will not get the STDs. I mean, that's the idea here. And what we saw earlier, and there's just a lot in this chapter that you could unpack, the purple linen, all of the things that are the feigned royalty that Babylon represents. It looks like it is the great power, but it's not. Don't be deceived. Babylon is going down. And from now to whenever entropy ends, and there's the return of Christ, empires will rise and fall. Babylons will rebrand. Beasts will mutate. And Christians have one job. Judgment begins at the house of God, not to protest, not to try to decipher Revelation and predict the future. This is connected to Daniel 7 and Daniel 4. There's so much imagery here about beasts and empires. They would have known this was coded language, speaking to them in the moment, tying back to the Old Testament. But you got one job. Babylon doesn't just oppress you, it tries to form you or deform you. If you don't resist it, if you don't come out, you become it. You got one job. You got to come out of Babylon. if you are not aware that you're playing into the spirit of the age, you will be unable to fully receive the mind of Christ. So I think about it in terms of 3 dimensions that just help me to stay sharp, not to be like Babylon's behind every corner. I can have fun while I follow Christ. I can have fun doing hard things in the world, but this is how I keep myself sharp, so that I will not receive any of her plagues like we just read, because her sins are piled up to heaven and God has remembered her crimes. I don't want to participate in it. Here's how I don't participate in it. Number 1, I outwitness Babylon. So Babylon is a witness. It has a powerful, pervasive influence. It can get 9th grade boys to tight roll their jeans and to have a certain shirt. And I share that with you in a funny way because that's how pervasive influence can be. And there are a lot of people that think they're being a witness for something greater than the empire of the age or Babylon when they protest. Let me say something very clear. Empire feeds on fear. It wants attention. An empire will not lose in a combative struggle of power. You're not going to be able to protest enough to get the validation you want. That can apply to what happens in the streets with immigration. That can apply to in your company where HR doesn't have a victim committee for what you want of some certain cause to get all the validation you want and everything in between. The goal of my challenges is not to be a witness for my suffering and to build an identity around my suffering and to get people to validate me and my experience. The slain and standing lamb is on the throne. Babylon isn't my home. The beast is not my leader. The empire is not the center of my allegiance. I am witnessing to something greater. And I live that witness and I outwitness Babylon when I confess the name of Christ, when I invite people into the story that God is building into my life, when I share my experience and I share how Christ is transforming it. I witness my experience with Christ. I witness their experience. I'm not leading for my own validation. I'm leading for impact. I'm outwitnessing Babylon. Second, I'm outlasting Babylon. I can't participate in it. I have to come out from it. And as I come out from it, I outlast. I live with a mission that is more clear to me than the Babylon of the age. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. I mean, the whole story for them that was playing out, and this is why an oppressed group of people upended the most powerful empire at that time. They didn't fight it with protest. They didn't fight it with power. They didn't say, validate me. They outwitnessed and outlasted the Roman Empire, even though it took their lives, the blood of the martyrs. I mean, I think about this in terms of the way we're so obsessed in this country with kids' sports kind of blows my mind. Because parents don't have enough of a mission and purpose in their own lives. They'll oftentimes live their identity through their kids' sports and feel like if we just keep them busy enough, then they won't get into trouble or they're going to learn all these powerful dynamic lessons. And let me tell you, parents, as someone who has spent 2 decades, a decade full time, working with leaders and coaching people, California to China, Finland to Florida, $50 billion organizations to small businesses, and everything in between. The difference between your child living the fullness of their life in Christ and not doesn't have anything to do with how many sports they played or how active and committed they were to their sports. If your kid wants it, great. Awesome. Support it. What's the stat now? Like 70% of kids burn out. We're not living with purpose and mission. We're not outlasting. We're trying to live false temporary things in the Babylon of the age. And we fall for all these ideologies. I mean, is Jesus Republican? Is Jesus Democrat? Is Jesus a small business owner? Is Jesus an entrepreneur? Is Jesus middle class? We take God and make God in our own image according to our struggles. And so we can't outwitness Babylon, and then we can't outlast living our mission and our purpose. And when you're locked in on what you want to do, that is the Spirit of God working in you. When you delight yourself in the Lord and He gives you the desires of your heart, when you're living God's purpose for you, you will outlast Babylon. The reason I use this kid sports example is I remember reading this in a book about kids and prodigies. And the author said this: if you have to ask if your kid is passionate about that sport, they're not. I use this as an example because if someone has to ask about, is that person passionate about their purpose or mission? Now, you don't fall into Western bias on that. It's got to show up in an extroverted, charismatic way. No, it's the price you're willing to pay. It's how much, and price doesn't mean compromise your values. It's how much of your insecurities will you sacrifice to stay on the purpose and mission God has for you. We will outlast Babylon, and I hope you participate in that. So I'm going to outwitness Babylon. I'm going to outlast Babylon. And I'm going to outlove Babylon. I'm going to outlove Babylon. There was a reason that this backwater group of oppressed people in Palestine upended Rome, because you were oppressed by them, and the Roman soldier would tell you, you got to carry my stuff for a mile. And so what Jesus did was He organized protests. And they went and protested having to carry bags. No. He said, you carry it another mile. Shame the shame back. Out love. It's the most powerful force in the world. Humility is the only force that can't be beat. And when you're secure in your identity and you don't have to get your experience witnessed, and you can outwitness Babylon and outlast it living your mission and purpose, you can outlove it. The imaginative vision of Revelation can capture your imagination to come out from Babylon. Because Babylon doesn't just oppress you, it tries to form you. And if you don't resist it, you become it. May we not participate in the spirit of the age, but live and show a better way.
I hope you enjoyed this teaching from 15and. Go to 15and.org, share these resources with others, and click the Donate Now button to participate in funding this mission.